My name is Kimberly Jones, and this is my interpersonal communication project. Next slide. I have provided an outline as to the topics that I will be discussing. Next slide. Stewart defined interpersonal communication as a subset of communication, a type or kind of contact that happens when the people involved talk and listen in ways that maximize the presence of the personal. Next slide. One may wonder, how does interpersonal communication affect our lives? The way we communicate has a direct link to the quality of our lives. Communication is a part of all our lives, whether it be verbal or nonverbal, and it always has a purpose. Interpersonal communication involves collaboration, choices, culture, identities, conversation, and nexting, which are all elements that an effective communicator uses to engage in the inhaling and exhaling processes of communication. Next slide. My personal overarching goals would be to listen more effectively without giving advice, stop being a faker when listening for too long, to minimize my physical barriers that could affect my listening abilities, and to completely eliminate my biased listening. Next slide. The components of enlarging the conversation would entail listening more effectively, acknowledging our weaknesses, gaining more clarification, researching resources to improve communication, comprehension, asking questions when needed, identifying communication needs, and improving the quality of conversations. Next slide. My background positives would be optimistic, educated, Christian, African American female, and I'm determined. My negatives would be I'm stubborn, a fake listener, and unfortunately a procrastinator. Next slide. My behavior blends were fairly similar. For This Is Me, I was considered a competent influencing specialist. The positive characteristics for me would be listed as caring, problem solver, friendly, kind, and unique. And the negatives were considered stubborn and lack of demand. Expected of me, which was the steady, competent type, the positives were social, incompetent, and the negatives were I am too nice, passive, and reserved. Next slide. How have they influenced me? They have influenced me greatly. My background has made me who I am today, and my behavior blends are closely relevant to who I am. I enjoy listening to people, but sometimes that willingness to listen is taken advantage of, and I become a fake listener because I'm too nice to cut off the communication. My empathy and caring soul has led many to confide in me over the years, and although I greatly appreciate the sense of trust that people get when talking to me, it can be overwhelming. I'm an optimistic by nature and a Christian by choice, and because of this, I consider myself to be blessed and highly favored. Next slide. The potential barriers that I see in my communication abilities would be fake listening, prejudices and biases, my lack of knowledge or understanding a conversation or communication, awareness, and noise and spatial distractions. Next slide. The steps that I will take to handle those barriers are going to be through awareness. I'm learning more about my communication barriers and learning how to check my biases before going into a conversation. To overcome fake listening, I know that I have to redirect my mind span when it begins to wander on non-relevant topics, and for the noise distractions, I will either remove myself from that particular area if possible or tune out the noise distractions, knowing that I need to focus on my speaker. Next slide. The noise pollutions that I foresee for internal would be selective hearing, personal beliefs and prior experiences, and for the external factor, I see interruptions, electronic devices, and personal appearances. Next slide. The solutions to those possible noise pollutions for the internal factors would be to work at listening, respecting the fact that others will have different thoughts and opinions than my own, and not allowing past experiences to determine the outcome of a present experience. The possible solutions for the external noise pollutions would be asking that questions be held to the end of a conversation, resisting external distractions, asking that electronic devices be silenced, turned off, or put away while communicating, and basically don't judge a book by its cover, and listen with your ears, not your eyes. Next slide. My plan of action for improving my interpersonal communication skills will be to practice active listening and think more about the inhaling and exhaling processes to explore and expand my interpersonal communication. And last but not least, I know that I need to become aware of my own biases and not be judgmental when going into a conversation or a communication. Next slide. In conclusion, to this course, I would like to say that I always automatically assumed that I was a good listener because the people would always come to me to talk, but in reality, I was an ineffective listener because I allowed my personal thoughts and feelings to interfere with what I really should have been hearing. In the words of James 1:19, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. Something we should all live by. Thank you.